A Pentagon official just said something that should make every American who remembers Iraq pause and rewind. After Azerbaijan's president authorized military retaliation and Iran attacked its 12th country, the question wasn't how do we prevent this from spiraling into regional war. It was, don't worry, this is actually simplifying things. Let me say that again. Iran has now struck 12 sovereign nations. Azerbaijan is preparing troops for retaliatory action. Multiple Middle Eastern countries are being pulled into direct military coordination with the United States. And the Pentagon's message is, this isn't expansion, it's consolidation. This isn't chaos, it's clarity. If that sounds familiar, it should. It's the exact rhetorical pattern used to justify every stage of mission creep in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're not expanding the war, we're building coalitions. More countries joining us means we're winning. Complexity is actually simplification if you understand the strategy. What you're about to hear is how officials reframe escalation as progress, how they turn 12 countries under attack into evidence of successful policy, and how the language of unity masks the reality of widening conflict. This isn't analysis from the State Department or a think tank. This is a senior defense official explaining why a multi-nation regional conflict is actually going according to plan. If you believe wars should have clear boundaries and defined endpoints, this press conference should terrify you, because what's being described isn't a focused military operation. It's the beginning of exactly the kind of open-ended regional entanglement America spent 2 decades trying to escape.
Maybe one more right here.
Yeah, the Azeri president earlier today basically authorized his Minister of Defense to begin preparing troops for some type of retaliatory action after the airport strike. As the Department of War and CENTCOM been working on deconflicting with the Azeri if they were to move in or attempt something in retaliation?
I'm sure there are plans, and I'll let the Admiral speak to that, but that does allow me to kind of address this idea that the war might be expanding or there's chaos, and nothing could be further from the truth. If anything, what Iran is doing by targeting allied countries that would otherwise want to stay out of this, they've actually pulled them into the American orbit. So now you've got UAE and Qatar and Bahrain and Saudi and Kuwait and others saying, hey, we're with you. We'll shoot with you. We'll fly with you. We'll defend with you. We'll allow you more basing and other a lot of which we can't talk about and won't talk about. But it's actually firming up the unity of the resistance in order to focus exactly where we need to. So this idea that it's expanding or going, no, it's actually simplifying in a number of ways exactly what we need to achieve and how we'll achieve it. I don't know if you anything
I
to add
won't,
to that.
I won't get ahead of policy in terms of what we might do. What I will point out is this is now the 12th country that Iran has attacked. 12 countries, and it goes right back to the Secretary's point. Those 12 countries are none too happy, and I look forward to working with all the partners who are willing to join us in this.
What I just heard from that Pentagon official is one of the most chilling examples of how mission creep gets normalized in real time. Let me walk you through why this language, this exact framing, should set off alarm bells for anyone who remembers how we got into Iraq and Afghanistan. The official was asked about Azerbaijan authorizing military retaliation after an airport strike, and whether the U.S. is deconflicting with regional actors as the conflict expands. That's a straightforward question about operational coordination in an escalating situation. But watch how the answer pivots immediately to narrative management instead of tactical reality. Nothing could be further from the truth, he says about the idea that the war is expanding. Then he offers this argument. Iran attacking allied countries is actually pulling them into the American orbit, which means more countries shooting with us, flying with us, defending with us, offering us basing rights. And therefore, this is the key rhetorical move. It's simplifying the conflict rather than expanding it. Let me break down why this is so dangerous. First, he's redefining expansion as consolidation. When more countries get attacked and join military operations, that's not simplification. It's the textbook definition of widening conflict. 12 countries have now been struck by Iran. 12. That means 12 governments making calculations about retaliation, domestic political pressure, and alliance commitments. Each one of those variables introduces complexity, risk, and potential for miscalculation. But the official wants you to believe that because these countries are now coordinating with the U.S., the situation is getting simpler. That's not strategy, it's spin. What he's actually describing is the formation of a regional coalition for sustained military operations. That's not a short-term focused strike campaign. That's the infrastructure for prolonged conflict. Second, notice the language about basing rights and capabilities. We can't talk about and won't talk about. That's not transparency, it's obfuscation. When officials tell Congress and the public that there are significant operational commitments they can't discuss, you're being asked to trust that complexity is being managed behind closed doors. But Iraq and Afghanistan taught us that undisclosed commitments become permanent entanglements. Temporary basing becomes permanent presence. Limited partnerships become long-term obligations. Third, the phrase "firming up the unity of the resistance" should raise every red flag. Resistance to what, exactly? If this is a focused operation to degrade Iran's military capabilities, why are we talking about sustained resistance? Resistance implies ongoing opposition over time. It implies an adversary that continues to exist and continues to threaten. That's not the language of a mission with a clear endpoint. It's the language of a generational struggle. Now let me connect this to historical pattern recognition. In 2003, when Iraq's neighbors started offering basing and overflight rights, officials called it proof the mission had regional support. When Afghanistan's conflict pulled in Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and other regional actors, officials said it demonstrated we were building coalitions, not expanding wars. The rhetoric was identical. More countries involved means more unity, which means we're winning. But what actually happened? Those coalitions became dependencies. Regional partners demanded concessions, arms sales, and political cover for their own agendas. The U.S. got drawn into local disputes that had nothing to do with the original mission. And 20 years later, we left both countries without achieving the transformational objectives that justified those expanding coalitions in the first place. The official also mentions that the admiral and others have plans for deconfliction, but won't detail them. Deconfliction is military jargon for making sure different forces don't accidentally shoot each other or operate in conflicting ways. The fact that deconfliction is necessary with Azerbaijan, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and others means you have multiple military forces operating in overlapping battle space. That's not a simple, focused operation. That's a complex, multi-actor conflict with enormous potential for miscalculation. Here's what really concerns me. The official presents Iran's attacks on 12 countries as evidence that Iran is making strategic mistakes, pulling neutral parties into opposition. But there's another interpretation. Iran is demonstrating it can strike across the region with impunity, forcing countries to choose sides, and daring the U.S. to commit to defending an ever-widening circle of partners. If that's Iran's strategy, then we're not simplifying the conflict. We're walking directly into the trap. Every additional country that gets attacked and joins the coalition is another commitment the U.S. has to honor, another red line we have to enforce, another potential scenario where American forces get pulled into combat to defend a partner. That's not consolidation of objectives, it's proliferation of obligations, and obligations are how limited operations become forever wars. I also want you to notice what wasn't said. The official didn't provide an endpoint, didn't describe victory conditions, didn't explain how we know when Iran's capabilities are sufficiently degraded, didn't articulate what happens if Iran retaliates against one of these 12 countries again. Those are the questions that define whether a military operation is achievable or open-ended. And the fact that they went unanswered while officials focused on narrative management tells you everything about where this is headed. So what should worry you isn't just that 12 countries have been attacked. It's that officials are framing that expansion as evidence of success. It's that undisclosed commitments are being made without congressional debate. It's that the language being used, resistance, unity, simplification, mirrors exactly the rhetoric that justified 2 decades of mission creep in Iraq and Afghanistan. If you care about preventing another forever war, demand answers now. How many countries can Iran attack before this stops being a focused operation? What are the undisclosed basing commitments being made? What are the criteria for mission success? And most importantly, if 12 countries under attack represent simplification, what would expansion actually look like? Because if officials can't answer that question, it means there's no limit they're willing to acknowledge. And that's how wars that start with precision strikes end with generational entanglements.